All right, so I am back with 5 fragrances that I actually got from my haul from the Perfume Box USA. So definitely shout outs to them. And these are actually going to be the Borouj fragrances. So I just kind of gave like a brief sort of overview of those fragrances in the last video that I did. But now I'm going to be giving more kind of detailed thoughts on, each one of these fragrances. This is actually, I'm starting to see a really kind of underrated sort of house. Now, what I can say about each one of these fragrances is it does seem like maturation is essential for most of these fragrances, because a lot of these, when I first sprayed them on, they smelled totally different, when I first sprayed them on, when I first got the fragrances, as opposed to, what they smell like now after kind of sitting for some time. So that's the biggest thing that I noticed with these fragrances is, yeah, these absolutely need to kind of sit, once you initially spray them. And once they do sit, they do, mature or age very nicely. All right. So the fragrances that we have here are going to be Borouj Perlador, which this is their take on PDM's Carlisle. And then you have Borouj Spiritus, which this is their take on Aventus by Creed. The next one is Borouj Lamasat Oud. This is like their take on Tom Ford's, Oud Wood. The next one is Borouj Silage. This is like a angel share twist. So it does smell a lot like angel share, but there are definitely some noticeable differences in this fragrance. And then the last one here that you have, which is Borouj Mysterious. This is like a kind of like a combination of like Baccarat Rouge 540 and like Herba Pura. All right. So those are the 5 fragrances that we have. So I'm going to start off with the Borouj Perlador. So Borouj Perlador, like I mentioned, this is their interpretation of PDM's Carlisle. Now the notes on this fragrance are going to be slightly different than Carlisle. So with this, you're going to get top notes of sage, basil, incense, violet, leather, gray musk, and oud. So obviously, I think with Carlisle, there's no oud in Carlisle. And even just, overall, some of the notes in this are a lot different than what you get with Carlisle. But, and I'll have the notes of Carlisle on screen here as well. I'm not going to read those off, but I'll have them on screen. And you can kind of see the differences between the notes. Now, the notes are different, but in my opinion, this smells very, very close to Carlisle. Now, when I first got this was definitely like kind of on the rough side, when compared to Carlisle. To me, it was definitely a noticeable quality difference between the 2 fragrances. And I mean, even now that this fragrance has sort of sat and maturated a little bit, I can still smell, a slight sort of quality difference between Carlisle and this fragrance. Carlisle is definitely a lot smoother. Well, I won't say a lot smoother, but it's noticeably smoother than what this is. This is definitely, more kind of aggressive, more in your face. You get, a little bit more of sort of like an alcohol blast when you first initially spray it on. So, I mean, stuff like that is kind of to be expected with, a price difference between a fragrance like this, which I believe this goes for like around $50-ish or so, as opposed to something like Carlisle, which is, over 300. But overall, to me, this is at least 90+% close to Carlisle. All right. So you are going to get that really sort of masculine, in my opinion, this smells kind of like a really expensive, high-end, sort of cigar, in my opinion. Even though There's no sort of like tobacco note in Carlisle or even this fragrance. That's the kind of vibe that I get from, this Carlisle scent profile. Is it kind of smells like really like a really expensive cigar with like some added, vanilla notes. Um, you don't get any sort of oud or anything like that from this fragrance. Maybe you kind of pick up on slight sort of leathery aspects with this, but this is just a really nice grown man, style fragrance. Like I said, it is more on kind of like the aggressive side. So like if you're familiar with fragrances like red tobacco, mystery tobacco, what is it? Argos, Trial of Bacchus, or even Alexandria Fragrances Hafez 1985. That fragrance, I think, smells the closest to something like this for the most part. I think that fragrance, though, might have a little bit more of kind of like a tobacco edge to it. So that's what makes that one a little bit different. But either way, man, this is still going to be within like that family of fragrances. And I think for like around that $50 price, this really does a good job at that type of scent profile. Now, also where I think that this fragrance really shines is the performance of the fragrance. So this is going to be easily like twice the strength of Carlisle. Carlisle on my skin, it sits really close to my skin really quickly. It projects maybe for like the first 45 minutes to an hour or so. But even during that time, this is still going to be considerably stronger than Carlisle, within that time. The projection on this one, I would say, lasts at least about 2 hours or so. And then even after that 2 hour mark, this is still going to be considerably stronger than what Carlisle is. Now, again, obviously Carlisle is going to be a little bit more smoother, more better blended. You could say it smells slightly higher quality, but overall, man, I really don't think that matters if you can barely smell the fragrance. And this is definitely one that you can smell. Also, the longevity on this is considerably better than Carlisle, at least for me. Carlisle on my skin is like a good 6 hours or so, which for this type of scent profile, you would expect it to last a lot longer than that. With this, I easily get, 8 to 10 hours or so on skin of total longevity. So this is, in my opinion, it's going to be a very good choice if you're looking for like a Carlisle sort of alternative that's not super expensive. All right. Now, if I'm going to give this a closeness rating to Carlisle, this to me is going to be at least about a sort of 85 to 90-ish% close to Carlisle. I would say closer to 90%. All right. So it does come very close to Carlisle. Like I said, it just doesn't have as much refinement as what Carlisle has. The quality isn't, exactly up there with the PDM, but overall, man, I do think that this comes very close. And then just in terms of like an overall rating, this is a 9 out of 10, man. If you really like this style of fragrance, which again is a very masculine, aggressive, sort of in your face, type of fragrance, that, like I said, it does kind of give you like, sort of slightly like tobacco sort of, vibes to the fragrance, tobacco, leather, kind of smoky vibes with, vanilla in the background as well. Then this is going to be right up your alley. And like I said, I do really, really enjoy this one, man. So this is going to be a 9 out of 10 for me in terms of my overall rating. All right. So I definitely do recommend this one for Carlisle alternative. I know Tafakar was another one that I liked a lot, but this definitely performs a lot better than Tafakar. Now, I do think Tafakar is smoother than this. All right. So I will say that, especially once you let that one maturate, but this definitely has the performance over Tafakar. All right. So that is the Borouj Perlador. All right, so the next one is Borouj Spiritus. So this is Borouj, their take on Creed Aventus. And this is actually a very good interpretation. Now, let me just get this out of the box here. That's the one thing that I don't really like about these things is they really, the bottles fit in there really tightly. So like I mentioned, this is a Aventus interpretation, all right? And this is actually a pretty decent one. So the notes on this are going to be slightly different from Aventus. In the top notes, you're going to get bergamot and lemon with this. In the mid, you're going to get woodsy notes, jasmine and lily of the valley. And then in the base, you get patchouli, musk, and amber. So no pineapple, no ambergris, no birch. You're not getting any of those notes, specifically in this fragrance, but this does smell a lot like Aventus. Now, when you first spray it on, it is going to smell more on the lemony side, than what Aventus does. So you're not really getting pineapple from this. You're getting lemon, but it's not like the really sort of harsh lemon, like lemon cleaner type of smell that you're getting from something like Armag's Club de Nuit Intense Man, the EDT. This is definitely a lot smoother than, what you get from that fragrance. Now, I don't know how this would compare to something like the EDP because I haven't smelled the EDP, so I can't really comment on that, the EDP of the Club de Nuit Intense Man. But this is still very good. And the way that this fragrance is done, even though there is no sort of birch or anything like that, or, a lot of the notes that you get from Aventus, you're still getting the same smell for the most part. This does still have that kind of like woody birch, sort of smoky type of smell that, Aventus has, especially once you kind of get into like the mid and the dry down. This does have that. This to me, it smells more kind of like a fruitier batch of Aventus. Fruity with, just, I would say the right amount of birch and smoke. So this is not going to be like an overly smoky, overly woody, sort of interpretation of Aventus. This is definitely going to be, in my opinion, a more sort of mass appealing, fruitier interpretation of Aventus. That's the style of Aventus that I like. It's the more kind of fruitier, slightly lighter, type of, Aventus sort of smell. And that's what you're getting from, this fragrance. Now, the performance on this fragrance, it is pretty decent. I get about like 7 hours or so of total longevity with this fragrance, which, considering what I get with the original Aventus, that's actually really good, because Aventus, no matter what batch I've tried, typically only lasts on my skin for about 3 hours or so. And after that, like, it's completely gone off of my skin. And it's not like, me going nose blind to the scent or anything like that. Just for whatever reason, Creed Aventus does not work on my skin at all in terms of, the performance. So yeah, this does do pretty decent in terms of the longevity. As far as like the projection goes, the projection is moderate. It's not the most beast mode, sort of interpretation of Aventus that I've smelled. I think the projection on this is definitely more along the lines of the original Aventus, especially like within that first sort of, hour or so of Aventus. That's pretty much the projection that I get from this fragrance for about the first hour and a half. And then after that, it does, definitely sort of dial back a little bit. But at least with this fragrance, I'm able to smell it, beyond, that 3 hour mark. Like I said, I get about 7 hours or so with this fragrance. Definitely a lot more if you spray it on clothes. So I mean, on clothes you're gonna get probably about 8 or 9 hours or so, but on skin I get about 7. All right. Now, in terms of just like an overall closeness rating to Aventus, this also is about 90% close, in my opinion, to Aventus. Like I said, the citrus in this, especially in the top notes, it is going to come off as being more on the lemony side, and you're not going to get like that juicy sort of pineapple that you get from Aventus. So you do get that difference, but I mean, to me, especially comparing it to the batch that I have of Aventus, which is I think like a 2018 batch, this smelled very close to it. It really did. So this is a very good interpretation. So like I said, I would give this one about a 90% close. And then just an overall rating, this is going to be, I would say, like a 9 out of 10. So very, very good if you're still, into the original Aventus scent profile. I think for me, the original scent profile of Aventus is a little bit dated. So, I'll reach for the Absolute Aventus scent profile a lot more now than what I do the original. But I do think that this is a very good interpretation of the fragrance. All right. So that one is Borouj Spiritus. All right, so the next one, this is Borouj Lamasat Oud, and this was a fragrance that when I initially got it, I was not feeling this fragrance at all. The way that this fragrance opened up, I couldn't get with it at all. After that, I sprayed it, a little bit after I did that video, probably about a month or so later, and I was like, oh wow, this smells totally different than what I remembered it smelling when I first sprayed it. All right. When I initially sprayed it, I wasn't really getting any sort of remnants of Tom Ford's Oud Wood, which, that's what people were telling me this was a clone of or an inspiration of in the comments when I did the initial video on this fragrance. Because I didn't know, based on what I was smelling, really what I was smelling. I didn't know if this was like a original fragrance or what, but it didn't smell like what I remembered, Oud Wood or any of the other sort of, Oud Wood interpretations that I've smelling like. So after letting this sit, like I said, it improved. It got a lot smoother. Yeah, it definitely got a lot smoother and a lot closer to, what Oud Wood smells like. So with this fragrance, the notes on this are going to be in the top notes oud. In the mid, you have cedar and gaiac wood. And then in the base, you have musk and patchouli. You're going to get a really, really large dose of the cedar wood. I think really that's the main thing that you're getting with this. I don't really smell much of any sort of oud in this. It's mainly going to be cedar wood and patchouli that I'm picking up from this fragrance. And I will say, in the opening of this fragrance, I think I do enjoy the Fragrance World version. What is it? Oud Wonder, I believe, is what the Fragrance World version is called. That one, to me, it just smells a little bit better to my nose than what this does. Where this one shines, though, is in the dry down. So in the dry down, this is considerably stronger in the dry down than what Oud Wonder is from Fragrance World. It projects a lot better. And just overall, I think this is a very, very smooth and really, really sort of mass appealing woody fragrance in the dry down. In the opening, like I said, I prefer the way that Oud Wonder smells. It comes across a lot smoother than what this does. This is definitely smoothened out a lot more than what it was when I first got the fragrance. But I think overall, the Oud Wonder is a little bit better when it comes to how it does, the Oud wood scent profile, at least, within the opening. All right. This, I feel like the cedar wood just kind of overpowers everything, with this fragrance when you first spray it on. And that's really all you smell for the most part. It's just straight cedar wood. You're really not getting any other notes from the fragrance other than that. So once this starts to dry down, once you kind of get, the musk come in, the patchouli note, it really kind of balances the fragrance out, and the fragrance actually becomes more kind of fresher as the fragrance starts to dry down. More fresh, more kind of mellow. So I do, again, prefer to wear this one in terms of like the dry down of, the kind of oud wood, scent profile. Now, again, performance wise, this is a beast. This is going to be a lot stronger than what the Tom Ford Oud Wood is. And this is going to be a lot stronger than what the Fragrance World Oud Wonder is as well. So really all of these fragrances, they are, pretty beast mode in terms of their performance. I would say probably the weakest one is the Spiritus, the Aventus interpretation. But even that one is not necessarily, it's not a weak fragrance. It's just, I would say the least strong fragrance out of all of these fragrances within this line that I have here. But yeah, man, the Borouj Lamasat Oud, if you watched that first video and were, maybe you were looking at this fragrance at first, and then, my sort of, reaction to that fragrance kind of drew you away from it, I would say maybe still give this one a try. Like I said, when you first get it, you'll probably kind of have to let this one sort of sit and, kind of smoothen itself out. But over time, it does definitely get better, especially if you like that, Tom Ford Oud Wood scent profile. In terms of the performance, like I said, the performance on this is very good. So I easily got over 12 hours with this fragrance, easily, in terms of the longevity. And then for the projection on this is going to be easily twice what you get with the Tom Ford and even the Fragrance World. The Silage on this is also very good as well, way better than what you're getting with the Tom Ford, and also the Fragrance World version. So performance wise, this one definitely wins, in terms of like oud wood interpretation. This is definitely the best one performance wise that I've smelled. Now, in terms of closeness of smell, this is going to be, I would say, about 85% for the most part. I do think that there are more of kind of like some leathery aspects that you get from oud wood that you don't necessarily get from something like this, the Lamasat Oud. This is, to me, a lot more kind of cedar wood dominant than, what the original Tom Ford is. All right. But it does still come very close, especially in the dry down, to what oud wood smells like. All right. It just, to me, it doesn't have like I believe the oud wood from Tom Ford has like cardamom in it. You really don't get any sort of cardamom feel from this fragrance at all. Which I think is definitely, it could use that for sure. I think that would definitely make this a top-notch fragrance if it had that, that note in the fragrance. All right. So about an 85% closeness rating. And then in terms of like an overall rating, I would say this is going to be about a 7.5 out of 10. So it's not like the worst fragrance, but, in my opinion, I think it's not necessarily the best either. All right. But it is still a solid choice, especially if you want like a beast mode sort of, oud wood interpretation. All right. So it has gotten better over time. And again, this is Borouj Lamasat Oud. All right, next one is Borouj Silage. So this is their sort of twist on Angel Share. And I mean, when you initially spray this on, you immediately are reminded of, Angel Share with this fragrance. But you can tell that there are some differences between this and Angel Share for sure. All right. Now, the note breakdown on this, the notes are going to be in the top notes. You have cognac, plum, and cinnamon. In the mid, you have iris and myrrh. And then in the base, you have tonka bean, sandalwood, and vanilla. So this one is definitely, it comes off as being sweeter than what Angel Share does, for sure. I mean, that's right off the bat. This is considerably sweeter than what Angel Share is. All right. So definitely sweeter. To me, it's not as boozy either, because it's sweeter. So I mean, even though this has, a top note of cognac, it to me, the booziness in this smells a little bit more kind of artificial than what you would get with something like Angel Share or even something like Royal Blend from French Avenue. This is not going to be as sort of crisp and boozy and, as what you get with Angel Share. This also, to me, is not as bright as what Angel Share or Royal Blend is in the opening. I think that plum note, definitely it adds to, that sweetness that you get and just kind of makes it more sort of like on the fruitier side. That I think that's the best way to kind of describe the difference in the opening. Is this smells more kind of fruity sweet, whereas Angel Share smells a little bit more boozy, sweet, and spicy, you could say. So yeah, that's the main difference that you get in the initial opening of this fragrance. Also, with the iris that you get in the fragrance, in the mid, the iris definitely, it's not like a super powdery iris, but it's like a really sort of buttery iris. So this fragrance, it has like a buttery sort of feel to it. Once you start to get into like the mid and the dry down, there's not much of like that sort of woody oak barrel sort of smell that you get from Angel Share. That's really not present in this fragrance at all. Like I said, it's definitely going to be more of kind of like a buttery, slightly fruity, slightly spicy, and vanillic sort of smell from this fragrance. With this one, I don't really get much of like that sort of almost kind of like apple cinnamon with cognac sort of smell, mixed with like the oak barrel woods. I don't really get that from this fragrance. So while it does definitely remind me of Angel Share, it's not really like a clone of Angel Share. This is definitely more of sort of like a twist on it. All right. So it is going to remind you of the scent profile, but definitely with, some noticeable differences. Now, in terms of the performance on this fragrance, performance is also very good with this. In terms of the projection, I would say this is like about the same sort of projection that you get with Angel Share. So it is going to be like really sort of like aromatic and airy. So to me, this doesn't really come off as like being like super thick and dense the way that some other, Angel Share interpretations have come off. This isn't going to be like super thick like something like Camera, even though Camera isn't like technically an Angel Share, interpretation. It does smell very similar to it and gets compared to it. This is not going to be as thick as something like Camera is. But yeah, I would say in terms of the projection, it is about the same as Angel Share. And then in terms of the longevity on this is also very good. So I'm getting easily 10 to 12 hours on skin with wearing this fragrance. So, you're not going to feel like, you're leaving anything behind when it comes to like the longevity of this fragrance. This is going to last on you. And especially if you spray it on clothes, this is going to last probably until you wash them. So this is a very good performing fragrance. Now, in terms of the closeness to Angel Share, this to me is more kind of like 75% Angel Share. So I think this is a fragrance where, to me, they weren't necessarily trying to, clone, Angel Share exactly. This to me more so seems like this is more of like their kind of twist or their interpretation of that sort of scent profile. But this is definitely, it's its own thing. All right. In terms of like an overall rating, this is a solid 8 out of 10. It's not necessarily my favorite, interpretation, I guess you could say, of that sort of scent profile. I'm definitely going to be wearing Royal Blend a lot more than I would this fragrance. But I do think that it does kind of get you into the scent profile, and really kind of introduce you to it a lot better than what I think Camera does. A lot of people bought Camera to kind of get into the Angel Share sort of scent profile, and really that fragrance doesn't smell anything like it. This to me, it smells a lot closer to what Angel Share smells like. But again, like I said, it's not going to be like a full sort of one-to-one, interpretation. This is its own thing. All right. So that is that. And then, this fragrance, I think this is going to be more of sort of like a winter and fall time fragrance for the most part. All right. So not really anything that I would wear in like the summer. Maybe the early spring is, I would say probably the time that you could also wear this, but definitely not like the late spring for sure, when it's like starting to get warmer outside. I think that this would be a little bit too cloying for you. All right. So again, man, solid interpretation of Angel Share. This one, just an overall rating, I think that this is at least about, a 8 out of 10 for the most part. So really enjoying this one for sure. And again, this is Borouj Silage. All right, and then the last one on the list, this again is going to be Borouj Mysterious. And like I said, this is kind of like a twist between like Baccarat Rouge 540 and Herba Pura from Xerjoff. All right, so this is the bottle. Really nice looking bottle. This one, you can't really see through it to see, how much juice is inside. But really, really nice on this one. And then for the notes, this does have a lot of notes. So in the top notes, you have amber, bergamot, sugarcane, light amber, and green notes. In the mid, you have melon, pineapple, jasmine, cedar, amber, mineral notes, and a gourmand accord. And then in the base notes, you have vanilla, white musk, cedar, moss, amber, and woodsy notes. So there's actually, according to this, amber in the top, the mid, and the base notes of the fragrance. And like I said, to me, what I get with this is you get definitely a Herba Pura sort of opening with this. With the, kind of dried fruits, the vanilla, the musk. But this doesn't come off as heavy as what Herba Pura does. All right. Which that's one thing that I do like about this fragrance. Herba Pura for me is just way too loud, and it's way too heavy. It's too thick. And I know a lot of people still wear that fragrance when it's warm outside. For me, it's just too much. It's just way too much. Really, no matter what time of the year it is, that fragrance is just too much. It can definitely choke you out for sure. This is definitely a lot smoother, in my opinion. It's smoother. It's a little bit more kind of, tuned down a little bit. And I do like that sort of, Baccarat Rouge sort of twist that it has on the fragrance. Um, it is, to me, this is definitely a really mass appealing, sort of fragrance. I think it's also very unisex as well. So I think that this is going to smell really amazing on a man or a woman. But you do kind of have to like, both Herba Pura as well as, something like Baccarat Rouge 540. Which I think, for most people, both of those scent profiles are pretty, likable. So I think most people will sort of like this fragrance. But if you're someone who doesn't really care for super fruity scents, you're not going to like this fragrance. And if you don't really like anything that has any sort of sweetness to it, you're also not going to like this fragrance because it is pretty sweet. Now, to me, the best sort of, Herba Pura style fragrance, in my opinion, is something like Barara's King. The way that the fruits in that fragrance are done, I think it definitely suits me a little bit better. The fruits in that fragrance are definitely a lot more kind of natural smelling. And also it has in the dry down more of kind of like almost a sort of oud woody sort of smell to it, but it's very light. So it kind of adds like a masculine edge to the fragrance. This to me is not really like a super, it doesn't really have a masculine edge to it. This is, in my opinion, kind of straight down the middle unisex. So like I said, I think that it'll easily be worn by a man or a woman, just as long as you kind of like, this sort of scent profile. But yeah, man, this is a very, very good, sort of, I would say this is kind of like an original fragrance or kind of like a hybrid blend for the most part, of two really popular, fragrances right now. Now, for the performance on this, the performance is also pretty good. Obviously, like I said, you're not going to get the same sort of projection as something like Herba Pura. And really, I would say you're not even going to get like the same sort of projection as what you would get with something like Baccarat Rouge 540, because that's also a pretty strong fragrance as well. You're not going to get that same level of like just monstrous like nuclear cloud sort of projection. This is not going to be that type of fragrance, but this is still going to be a very strong fragrance. So it is going to give you, in my opinion, like about an arm's length, sort of reach in terms of the projection. And as far as like the longevity goes, the longevity on this is also really good. So I easily get over 12 hours on skin with this fragrance. So, it is going to last you about as long as something like, Barara King. My Tender Amber from Zara, I believe that lasts a little bit less than what this does. But that fragrance is also, it's not as thick as what this fragrance is either. So that one definitely, the citruses are a lot more juicier, and kind of natural smelling. Whereas this one, like I said, it does have kind of more of like that sort of dried fruit sort of smell that you would get from something like Herba Pura. All right. So performance, like I said, on this is very good. And then, I mean, as far as like a closeness rating, I can't really necessarily rate this as a closeness rating because it's kind of like a blend of two different fragrances. So I won't really give this a closeness rating, but in terms of just an overall rating, this I think is a 9 out of 10 easily. I think if you're looking for something different from, like Herba Pura or like Al Haramain's Amber Oud Gold Edition, I think, maybe check this fragrance out, especially if you're looking for something that's a little bit more sort of toned down than those fragrances. This is definitely going to be more along the lines in terms of strength anyway, as something like Barara's King. At least, you know, the batch of Barara King that I have anyway. I know some people say that that fragrance is like super beast mode, you know, like what Herba Pura is. I get more of like a toned down sort of projection from Barara King. So maybe that may have been like the earlier sort of batches of Barara King that I think had like the magnetic cap. The cap that I have on mine is more kind of like a snap-on cap. So possibly that fragrance has been, you know, reformulated and, you know, slightly toned down a little bit. But this is going to be more along the lines of the projection of, you know, what the current batch of that fragrance is that I have. All right. So this one, man, like I said, is very good if you like fruity, you know, ambery, vanillic style fragrances. You know, that are extremely unisex and mass appealing. I think that this is definitely going to be one that's going to be up your alley. All right. So again, this one is Borouj Mysterious. All right. Now, if I were to rate these fragrances, and let's just say this, if I'm going to say which one of these fragrances are my favorite, and then which one out of these fragrances are my least favorite, I think what I would have to say is my favorite out of all of these would have to be the Borouj Mysterious. All right. I do think for sure that this is my favorite out of all of these. And then I think my least favorite is still going to be the Lamasat Oud. Now, even though I do think that this has improved a lot, I just think out of all of these fragrances, this would probably be the one that I would wear maybe the least out of all of them. But yeah, man, favorite Borouj Mysterious, least favorite Lamasat Oud. But all of them, like I said, I've given them all solid ratings. So if you like the scent profiles and you're looking for like a really good cheap alternative to the originals, or, you know, if you're looking for something like a twist on a scent profile like this or the Borouj Silage, then these are all, you know, solid choices. So definitely, man, check all of these out. Definitely let me know what you all think in the comments of these fragrances. If you all have smelled them, let me know if you love them. Do you hate them? Are they just okay? And also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you all in the next video.